Oh, hey, what's up, good people? Welcome back to yet another episode of our TechTrends Podcast. As you all know, this podcast is around conversations with tech leaders. So we get to sit down with tech leaders from across Africa, from across the world, to just talk about the interesting initiative or to just get to hear the contributions towards the tech ecosystem, of course, with a bias or with a focus for Africa. In the last podcast, we had an interesting chat actually with Dan Quach from Africa Data Center, actually, to basically just talk about connectivity and all other things around telcos and connectivity in Africa. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking to someone exciting from TBD. Her name is Angie Jones, and Angie is the global vice president of developer relations for TBD, Block's newest business unit focused on open and decentralized technologies. She's also an award-winning teacher and an international speaker who shares her wealth of knowledge at software companies and conferences all over the world. And why is this podcast so interesting? Because we are doing this podcast at the same time that TBD has announced a hackathon targeting developers from across Africa. And this is what you need to know. So this podcast has been launched. It's actually in partnership with the Africa Blockchain Conference, which I know is actually coming to Nairobi. And this, according to TBD, this hackathon is an exciting competition designed to drive innovation, creativity, and tech advancements of payments in Africa using TBDEX open source protocol. Of course, I'm going to get Angie talk about TBDEX and basically what it means for the payment ecosystem. So yeah, what do you need to know about this hackathon? So the submission period for this hackathon will open on 31st July, which means it already has opened, and closes on 15th September. So you have a couple of weeks to actually apply should you be interested in that particular hackathon. And it will culminate in 9th to 11th December 2024 in Nairobi, Kenya at the Africa Bitcoin Conference. So much, Angie, for joining us for this podcast. My name is Nixon Karali. I'm a tech journalist based in Nairobi, and I cover tech and startups in Africa a lot. And of course, I've covered a lot of content around blockchain, Web3, and all that. And of course, it's interesting for us to have this conversation, just talking about payments in Africa. And of course, I'll read about the amazing work you guys are doing. And of course, this will be a good platform for actually talk about what you're doing, talk about you, of course, as well, and of course, talk about the upcoming hackathon that actually available and actually covered, targeting developers in Africa. So maybe just a good starting point will be you introducing yourself, telling us who you do, what you do, and every other thing that we need to know about you.
Sure. So yes, I'm Angie Jones, and I'm head of developer relations at TBD, which is Block's newest business unit focused on open source and decentralized technologies. Mm-hmm. In my role, what I do is to help educate developers who are interested in building solutions for digital identity, for cross-border payments, or any type of payment solutions. We build SDKs that are open source. They're based on open protocols. And so my team's role is to help enable developers to utilize these tools.
All right. And of course, when I was researching, about before actually came to this podcast, I read about how you guys are building, as you said, open source toolkits that enable frictionless cross-border payments, right? Maybe just tell us about this, especially I'm curious to hear about when you talk about identifiers and verifiable credentials. Talk about what you're building, and every other thing that we need to know about, TBD.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take it a step back, and if we look at the web itself, it's missing an identity layer, and so what that means is every time you want to use a new application or go to a new website, if they need to persist anything about you, then you have to do what? Create a new account each time. I don't know about you, but my name is the same across, right? Like a lot of this information is the same no matter which application I go to, and yet I have to kind of regurgitate it and produce like these different profiles everywhere across the web, right? And so what we're looking at doing with payments is enabling you to have a decentralized identity that you own and control, and you can take that identity with you across various payment applications, right? And so that's where the decentralized identifiers come in. And then the verifiable credentials, we're utilizing this open protocol and technology to essentially allow you to digitally comply with whatever regulations a liquidity provider or financial institution may have, right? And so we're doing all of this with what's called TBDEX, which is a protocol for messaging between financial institutions and payment applications, and also basically just allowing these different companies to connect with each other. So think of this as a network where if I'm a wallet application, I'm a payment application, right? And I want to just pick whichever financial institutions I'd like to serve on the back end of this, right? I can do that using this protocol because there's one common language that's being spoken between all of these different businesses, so that I don't have these bespoke one-off integrations with each financial institution. If we're all using the same protocol, I can easily connect with any liquidity provider in the world that I want. And what this does is this allows businesses to expand internationally. So right now, I might have a payment application that is restricted to whatever domestic currency that I operate in. In order to, let's say, move money across borders or enable my customers to do so, then I would need some liquidity outside of my local region, right? And that's where this network and this protocol comes in. I can plug in with these various liquidity providers, whoever, as many of them as I want, in this permissionless way. I don't need to call TBD up or anything like that. I can just connect directly with them. And now I've broadened my business. I've expanded to whatever market that liquidity is provided in.
All right. So we are talking about cross-border payments here.
Yes.
And I think one thing I know for sure is that different jurisdictions actually have varying levels of regulatory requirements for cross-border payments. And of course, these are led to a lot of inconsistencies in the systems. And we've also seen a lot of tech disparities existing, especially for us here in Africa, with some regions, of course, having advanced tech infrastructure, for cross-border payments, while others are still lagging behind. Do you believe actually centralized identifier could actually be a solution to this?
I think the TBDX protocol, which comprises of the centralized identity, comprises of verifiable credentials, I think this unlocks a lot of that, right? And so, like you said, there's liquidity providers all over the world, and they all have their own regulations that they need to comply with. They're able to specify those regulations in a coded way, such that any payment application could connect with them. And it's clear as day what needs to be provided from a compliance standpoint from users, right? Like what is your identity verification flow look like? What is your KYC, know your customer flow look like, right? And they're able to codify that such that I can still, as a wallet application, integrate that liquidity provider in my mini network, specify what my rules are essentially, and then customers would be able to comply with those things, so they can do whatever they need to do in order to comply, or they can, once they've done it once, let's say that I have a payment application A, and then I also have payment application B. Both of them use the same liquidity provider in the background, right? If I use payment application A as a customer and I go through the whole KYC flow with them, that liquidity provider can issue me a token essentially that says, okay, I've already done KYC on you. Now, if I were to see that liquidity provider and payment application be again, I don't know. It's in the background, right? But that application knows, oh, I already know her. Here's a token that states that I've already done KYC. I can easily put my hands on that. And so they don't need to reperform that everywhere they see me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about the web. Now you see the analogy with the web where I need to do a new profile everywhere I go. What if I just basically brought along these credentials and this identity with me so that you can recognize me if you see me in another app?
All right. So actually, you don't have to be every time you move your application, you have to input your details afresh, because that's get to be a lot of tiresome and all that. So maybe just based on what you said, what would you say is actually the is so unique about the products you're building?
I think what's unique here, one is that it's all based on open standards, open protocols. The SDKs are open source. And so we really want to break away from the silos and the centralized control that we see in the global financial industry right now, and enable businesses to have these open tools to build the solutions that they want to build. So TBDEX itself does not do cross-border payments, does not settle anything. It's, again, a protocol in a language that enables other businesses to do so in the way that they see fit. So that's the difference here.
All right. And actually, I mean, what gaps have you seen, in Africa around this space that you're trying to build?
I think that a lot of places in Africa are not as equipped with the tools that we see in other places from a financial standpoint, right? And so, honestly, I feel a lot of them are kind of excluded from the global economy if we think about it. Sending money to Africa is very hard for me to do as someone who's sitting in the US right now. I remember I went to Nigeria last year and I needed to hire a videographer to capture my experience there. And I secured this engagement before I left home, and I sent the payment through my bank. And I flew from the US all the way to Nigeria, and that payment still had not arrived. The videographer had done all of the work. I was there for a week, and that payment still had not arrived. I flew all the way back home to the US, and that payment had still not arrived. So this is the problem that we're seeing. It's much too difficult to send payments. It takes too long. The fees are through the roof. And there are a lot of companies on the ground in Africa that are solving this problem. So we believe that these open source tools can get them closer to the solution they envision.
Right. I mean, that's interesting because it's actually not a problem I experienced myself, just in Africa. I remember even there's a time I was actually in Venice, and I had to make sure when I get to Venice, I changed to the local currency because the transfer I made from my Kenyan bank couldn't actually work. So I think when you make it open source, you make it actually easy for people to actually use. And I think, those are actually the gaps that actually currently, that need to be fixed because really if I make a transfer, for example, from my country to a different country, and it explains why a lot of people when they travel, they work with hard cash. It's easier for them that way. Yeah, it's easier for them that way. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And that works on the ground. But then when you start thinking about, I want to send money back home, or, whatever your use case may be, you're kind of stuck. And so we are really excited to see like a lot of the solutions that local developers are coming up with. And And we actually visited the continent and stopped in a few countries a couple of months ago, and did some hands-on workshops with developers from payment applications, and they were super excited about this technology and what it unlocks.
All right, interesting. So in Africa, you are currently operating in which markets?
So right now, our first liquidity node on the network is Yellow Card. Are you familiar with them?
Yes, I'm familiar with the yellow card. Yes.
Yes, so Yellow Card, as you know, operates in about 20 something countries in Africa. And so they are the first liquidity node. Also, Chipper Cash is now
Yeah.
integrating with the protocol as well. So we're start to see like these liquidity nodes pop up on the network. And as a
Mhm.
payment application, it's as easy as knowing their decentralized identifier. If I get Yellow Card's decentralized identifier, takes me 2 seconds to paste that in
Yeah.
my code base, and now I'm connected to them, and I have liquidity to all of the countries that they serve.
Oh, interesting. And I think you spoke about developers earlier, and of course, the challenge about payments, and probably this explains why, let's just shift a bit. You guys unveiled the hackathon. Is it currently running, or is it actually in partnership
Yeah,
with is it Africa Bitcoin Conference?
that's right.
It's actually quite a very exciting competition. And I remember when I was writing about it, I got so many inquiries about, how do I sign up and all that. So what was the idea behind this hackathon?
Yeah. So one is the hackathon is focused on our TBDX protocol, which again, this is for the cross-border payments. And what we're doing with the hackathon is we've set up this sandbox environment that illustrates a network, right? And we
Mhm.
have five of these like kind of sandboxy liquidity providers on the network. So the challenge is to build a payment application to integrate with those liquidity providers.
Yeah.
And what we're getting at here is one is showing these local developers just how easy it is to connect to a liquidity provider,
Yeah.
but also kind of helping them to think through how can I make this into like a business model, right? If I were to go this route, like, what choices would I make? What design decisions would I make to make this a very seamless and user friendly experience? And so, yeah, we've partnered with Africa Bitcoin Conference. So the hacking part is right now.
Mhm.
The finalists will be flown to Kenya to attend the Africa Bitcoin Conference,
Oh,
where
yeah.
they'll be able to pitch their presentation to our judges there,
Mhm.
and then we have a winner. So we're giving away a prize pool of $30,000 in Bitcoin.
Mhm. And so what kind of products are you looking to have these developers will take part in the hackathon actually build?
Yeah, payment applications is what we're
Mhm.
looking for
Mhm.
specifically. Yes. So wallet apps. And it's really interesting because they can then start thinking about how do I manage my customers' decentralized identity when it's not necessarily stored with my application, it's stored with them. And so you start to see like this paradigm shift in how you think about this from a payments perspective or app developers perspective.
All right. And these have to be African focused payment applications.
The residents or the participants of the hackathon need to be residents of Africa. However, like the liquidity providers that we've provided in the sandbox, some of them have African currencies, some of them have digital currencies such as Bitcoin, and
Mhm.
some of them have other currencies that are outside of Africa, like maybe USD, for example, right? And so this really gets into like the global perspective. Like, yes, think of your own region, but also think about, how you might engage with the rest of the global economy.
All right. And this is actually the first time the hackathon is happening. And let me just talk to us. Are you looking to have it like an annual hackathon or just a one-off event?
Yeah, we would love to do it annually. This is our first one with Africa Bitcoin Conference and the first hackathon that's focused on TBDX. So we're really curious to see what comes out of it and what lessons we can learn from that. And hopefully, yes, we can repeat this next year.
Right. I know, of course, having studied about the African market, especially the payments, sector, you have so much expectation from this hackathon. So, what do you expect to see from these developers?
Yeah, based on our trips on the ground, the workshops that we held were available to anyone who wanted to come. It was during the week, which is challenging, and it was a full day, right? So developers would need to commit to a full day to sit with us during the week, right? The hackathon, I mean, the workshops were sold out, and when I say sold out, it was free, but they were sold out as far as capacity, right? And so it was like hundreds of developers that actually signed up for these workshops and came and learned about this and hands on keyboard develop these applications with us. And so I know for a fact that there's excitement on the ground for it. People got to, envisioning what I can do with this technology, how I can bring it back to my existing business, or maybe even start a new one with it.
All right, interesting. And of course, I'm going to try and make sure I attend when the conference comes to Kenya. But of course, there's so much to expect, especially around payments and what we are doing. Maybe just as you almost come to an end, what is are you currently working on, and what should now people expect from you and your team, especially around payments, for this region?
Yeah, so right now we're helping all of the companies that are interested in this technology. Like I mentioned, Yellow Card is almost ready, so they have just finished integrating. We've released these SDKs only about 2 months ago or so, and so it's relatively new, and we see excitement all over the world for it. And so we're helping these businesses who are saying, yes, this is what I need. We're helping them to actually get up and running with the technology.
Right. And this through, the workshops you mentioned, through,
Through
events like
conference talks. Yeah, that's right. We do live streams on a weekly basis. Our website is tbd.website. And from there you can see like all of the different things that we're doing, the calendar of events, the conferences and things that will be at in these fun activities like the hackathon.
Yeah, and what I'm getting is cross-border payments, and basically payments is in general is actually part of at the heart of TBD.
Right. So the part that we focus on is that the actual tools, right? Not necessarily the payments themselves, but the tools that enable any business to do so. A lot of time folks will ask like, "Oh, who's your competing apps?" And I have to tell them we're not building an app, right?
Yeah.
We're building just the kind of the protocol, the technology, and the tools that enable other apps.
Yeah, right. And maybe just as probably my last question,
Sure.
about TBDEX. It's talk to us about TBDEX. I know it's a financial protocol, yeah. So talk to us about what it is, and of course, what you want to see, these developers actually work on around TBDEX.
Yeah. So TBDX is very loaded a word in that it's an open protocol as well as a network where you have these various liquidity nodes and then you have liquidity seekers. What TBDX does is allows liquidity seekers to find liquidity providers wherever that might be, right? And so it's a system that allows apps to basically curate their own mini networks of what they like to see. So think about if you had to start today and you needed to build a payment application and you're able to basically pick puzzle pieces to say, where do I need to serve? I want a little bit of this currency. I want a little bit of that one. I want this currency and that currency. And you're basically building out your backend with the liquidity providers of your dreams, right? As long as they all speak the same language, which is TBDEX, and utilize this protocol. There's no one that you need to call in order to do that. You just can plug and play.
All right. Thank you so much, Angie, and thank you so much for those insightful, conversations. I'm hoping I'm going to host you once the hackathon is done, so we can, just pick up and the lesson learned, talk about the application that are built by these developers, and of course, talk about what this hackathon means for Africa as a region. Because as we said earlier, there's a gap that needs to be filled. A lot of challenges around cross-border payments, even payments in general. So it's actually quite interesting to see what you and the team actually doing around this space, and what plans you have for this market. So maybe as we wind up, any closing remarks?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. We're really excited about the technology as well as the reception that we've seen around it. Super excited about the hackathon. We do encourage people to participate. Check it out at tbdex.io/hackathon. All the details are there. Go ahead and get started. We have a beautiful community in Discord. If you get stuck, you have any questions, reach out. We're here to help you.
All right. Thank you, Angie, and thank you for joining us for this virtual podcast. I hope you are doing it physically, but actually it's good, that to have you. And of course, we look forward to the hackathon, and of course, we look forward to further discussions around, the hackathon, and of course, what you and the team are doing at TB. Thank you so much for joining us. And I really appreciate for you finding time, despite the time differences. And we look forward to talking more around this space.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, thank you. That's it for this latest episode of our podcast. My name is Nick Canali, and of course, I hope you enjoyed and of course got to hear the ideas or the plans that TBD has for this market, for Africa in general, and of course, how payments ecosystem in Africa look like, and of course, what to expect with the future, and of course, more details about the hackathon. Remember, the cash prizes to be won for this hackathon. The first prize will get up to 15,000 in Bitcoin. The second prize will get 10,000 in Bitcoin. Of course, the third prize will get 5,000 in Bitcoin. So that could be the right chance for you if you're a developer out there to actually be part of this hackathon and help grow the payment by building payment ecosystem, actually building some interesting payment application. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Nick Canali, and you can get to see an article I did around this hackathon on the website. I'm going to be sharing the link in the description section, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Cheers.